Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. In the vast realm of the dream continent, reality blurred with fantasy. Each night, when mortals fell into their slumber, their minds drifted into this world, a shifting kaleidoscopic landscape where the imagination had no boundary. But not everyone could control these dreams. For most, they were fleeting, shapeless figments, quickly forgotten upon waking. Yet, for Alice, the dream continent was not a place of passive wandering. She was a dream weaver, one of the few who could manipulate dreams, shaping them with intent and purpose. Alice's footsteps echoed softly across the tiled halls of the Weaver Academy. The building itself seemed alive, pulsing with the hum of magic that coursed through its walls. Frescoes of ancient weavers adorned the high ceilings, their eyes following her as she passed. She couldn't shake the feeling that her journey had just begun, even though she had already graduated at the top of her class. Being a dream weaver was more than mastering the craft of dream. It was about maintaining the balance between dreams and reality. Her heart pounded as she approached the great doors of the Dream Council's chamber. She had been summoned, and though she was not given much detail, there was a sense of urgency in the air. It wasn't too long before she found out why. Inside, the council sat around a long, curved table. Their faces were solemn, etched with concern. In the center of the room, a faint wisp of black smoke swirled, trapped in a glass sphere. It pulsed and writhed, as though it were alive. Alice, one of the council members, a stern man named Arkin, said, "Thank you for coming. We have a crisis." Alice's eyes were fixed on the swirling smoke. "What is that?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the unease creeping into her chest. "That," Arkin said gravely, "is a fragment of a nightmare." The word sent a chill down Alice's spine. Nightmares were not uncommon, but this was different. This was not a fleeting bad dream, the kind that dissipated with the light of dawn. This was something darker, something real. "We've been tracking the appearance of these nightmares," Arkin continued. "They are spreading, corrupting the dream worlds. If they're not stopped, the line between dreams and reality will blur beyond repair. These nightmares, they are not just affecting dreams. They are beginning to seep into the waking world." Alice felt her throat tighten. The consequences of such a breach were unimaginable. "Why me?" she asked, though deep down, she knew the answer. "You have a gift," Arkin said, his voice softening. "The ability to enter others' dreams and change them from within. We believe you may be the key to stopping them." Alice's fast pulse quickened. She had always known her ability was rare, but to hear the council speak of it in such terms made her feel the weight of her responsibility. "We will not send you alone," another council member, Mira, added. "You will have companions. They too possess unique ability. Together you must delve into the deepest layers of the dream continent, into the very heart of these nightmares, and stop them before it is too late." Alice nodded, determination settling in her chest. She would do whatever it took to protect the dream world and the real world. The journey began the next day. Alice stood at the threshold of the first dream portal, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. By her side were her three companions, Leon, Mira, and Kane. They were all dream weavers, but each had their own special powers. Leon was tall and lean, his dark hair falling into his eyes as he concentrated on the dream portal before them. He had the ability to manipulate time within dreams, a skill that had saved them many times in their past training session. Mira was the opposite, bright and cheerful, with a warm presence that made others feel safe. Her ability to heal broken dreams was invaluable. She could restore order to even the most chaotic and corrupted dreamscapes, a talent that Alice knew they would need as they faced the nightmare. Kane stood like a sentinel, his broad shoulders and imposing stature a testament to his strength. He was a warrior in every sense, able to manifest physical power in dreams that made him a formidable protector. His role was clear: to guard them from the dangers that lay ahead. The portal shimmered before them, its surface rippling like water. Beyond it lay the first dream they would enter, a dream that had been infected by a nightmare. "Ready?" Leon asked, glancing at Alice. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Let's go." Together they stepped through the portal into a world unlike any Alice had ever seen. The dreamscape was a vast desert, its sands shifting underfoot like liquid gold. In the distance, black clouds loomed, swirling ominously. The air was thick with tension, as though the dream itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. This dream, its sense already beginning to fall apart, Mira whispered, her voice tight with worry. Alice could feel it too. The dream world was unstable, its edges fraying like a tattered piece of cloth. It wouldn't be long before the nightmare took full control. "We need to find the dreamer," Leon said, scanning the horizon. "If we can reach them, we might be able to stabilize the dream before the nightmare takes over." They moved quickly across the sands, the wind whipping at their faces. The closer they got to the black clouds, the more the dream twisted around them. Shapes formed in the sand, twisted grotesque figures that clawed their way toward them, their eyes glowing with malice. Nightmare spawn Cain growled, his muscles tensing as he prepared to fight. Alice's heart raced as the figures closed in. They moved unnaturally fast, their limbs contorting in ways that made her stomach churn. "Leon, slow them down," she called. With a flick of his wrist, Leon manipulated the flow of time within the dream. The nightmare spawn's movements became sluggish, as though they were wading through thick syrup. Cain stepped forward, his fists glowing with energy as he struck the first creature, shattering it into a cloud of black smoke. Mira moved beside Alice, her hands glowing with soft light. "I'll protect you," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around them. Alice nodded, her focus on the dreamer they needed to save somewhere. Within this crumbling world, a person was trapped, unaware that their dream was being consumed by darkness. As they fought their way through the nightmare spawn, Alice's mind raced. The Dream Council hadn't told her everything. She could feel it in her bones. There was something deeper at play here, something that connected her to these nightmares. They reached the center of the dream, where a lone figure stood, their back to the group. The dreamer was frozen, their form flickering as the dream world crumbled around them. "There," Alice said, pointing, "we need to wake them up." But as they approached, the figure turned, and Alice's heart dropped into her stomach. The dreamer's eyes were pitch black, their face twisted into a grotesque smile. This was no ordinary dreamer. This was a nightmare in human form. Cain moved to strike, but before he could reach the figure, the ground beneath them shifted. The desert sands turned to quicksand, pulling them down into the depths of the dream. Alice gasped as the world around her dissolved into darkness. She was falling deeper and deeper into the heart of the dream until there was nothing left but the cold, suffocating grip of the nightmare. When Alice opened her eyes, she was no longer in the desert. She stood in the middle of a dense forest, the trees towering above her like sentinels. The air was thick with fog, and the ground beneath her feet was damp and cold. She spun around, her heart racing. "Leon, Mira, Cain," she called, but there was no answer. Panic rose in her chest as she realized she was alone. "Where am I?" she whispered to herself, her voice trembling. This was not the same dream. The nightmare had dragged her into a different realm, a place deep within the dream continent that few had ever ventured into. It was cold, dark, and silent like the calm before a storm. Alice's breath hitched as she heard a low growl behind her. Slowly, she turned, her heart pounding in her chest. A massive creature stood at the edge of the forest, its body cloaked in shadow. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its mouth curled into a snarl. This was no ordinary nightmare spawn. This was something far worse. Alice's mind raced. She had to think fast. She couldn't defeat this creature on her own, not without the help of her companions, but they were nowhere to be found. Her heart pounded in her chest as the creature stalked toward her, its growl reverberating through the forest. Then in the distance, a faint light appeared. It flickered weakly like a dying star, but it was enough to give Alice hope. She ran. Alice sprinted through the forest, her legs burning as branches tore at her skin and clothes. The low growl of the nightmare creature echoed behind her, its massive form crashing through the underbrush like a force of nature. Her mind raced, searching for a way out, for some semblance of control. This was a dream, after all, a place she should be able to manipulate, bend to her will. But the nightmare was too strong here, twisting the dream into something far beyond her reach. The flickering light ahead grew brighter, and for a moment, Alice dared to hope that it was her companion. Leon, Mira, or Cain, any of them could help turn the tide. She pushed herself harder, her breath coming in ragged gasps as she wove between the trees, the light growing closer with every step. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet shifted, the forest floor gave way, and she tumbled forward, falling into an open glade. Alice landed hard, the wind knocked out of her as she skidded across the damp grass. The flickering light hung just above her, now suspended in the air like a glowing orb. Its warmth soothed her aching body, but she had no time to bask in its comfort. The nightmare was still coming. Scrambling to her feet, Alice turned to face the creature. It emerged from the trees, its hulking form covered in shadows that writhed and twisted like smoke. Its eyes gleamed with malice, and a snarl escaped its maw, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Alice's mind raced. She had to do something. She couldn't keep running forever, and her companions were nowhere to be found. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached for the one power she had left, the ability to alter dreams. But would it be enough? She focused on the light, drawing its energy into her hand. The orb pulsed in response, growing brighter and warmer. Alice felt the power course through her veins like a surge of adrenaline. She raised her hand toward the nightmare, willing the dream to bend to her will. The creature snarled again, sensing the shift. It lunged at her, but Alice was ready. With a shout, she unleashed the energy from the orb, sending a wave of light crashing into the nightmare. The creature recoiled, its form flickering as the light tore through it. For a brief moment, Alice saw the shadows peel away, revealing a twisted humanoid figure beneath the darkness. Its eyes were wide with fear, and its mouth moved soundlessly as the light consumed it. Then, with a final echoing roar, the nightmare disintegrated, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Alice collapsed to her knees, her body trembling with exhaustion. The glade was quiet now, the only sound the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. She had done it. She had defeated the nightmare, but the victory felt hollow. She was still alone, lost in this twisted dream world, with no idea how to find her way back to her friend. The orb of light hovered above her, flickering weakly. Now that its energy had been spent, Alice reached up, her fingers brushing against it. As soon as she made contact, the light flared brightly, blinding her for a moment. When the light faded, she was no longer in the glade. She was back in the desert. The sand stretched out before her, golden and endless, but the storm clouds that had loomed in the distance were gone. The dream was stable again, the nightmares no longer a threat. And standing a few yards away, looking just as disoriented as she felt, were Leon, Mira, and Kane. Alice Mirasel's voice was the first to break the silence, and Alice barely had time to react before her friend rushed over and enveloped her in a tight hug. Thank the stars, Yuri and Kane. Leon and Kane followed, relief evident on their faces. "What happened?" Kane asked, his voice gruff but edged with concern. "We were fighting those nightmare spawn and then we got separated." Alice took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I don't know," she admitted. "The dream shifted. I ended up in some forest and there was this creature, a stronger nightmare. I managed to fight it off," but her voice faltered as the memory of the twisted figure flashed through her mind. "It was more powerful than anything I've ever seen." Leon frowned, his brow furrowing in thought. A nightmare that strong, it's not a coincidence. "These aren't just random dream corruptions. Someone or something is behind it." Alice nodded. "I think it's connected to the Dream Reaver." The mention of the name sent a shiver through the group. The Dream Reaver was a legend among the Dream Weavers, a powerful being who had once been one of them, but had turned to darkness, seeking to control both the dream world and reality. Many believed the Reaver was nothing more than a myth, a cautionary tale to warn young weavers of the dangers of power. But Alice knew better. She had seen the truth in her own nightmare. "We need to keep moving," she said, pushing herself to her feet. "If the Reaver is involved, this is far worse than we thought. We have to find the source of these nightmares and stop them before they spread any further." Kane gave a sharp nod. "Lead the way." Together the group moved across the desert, the oppressive heat replaced by a cool, steady breeze. The dreamscape was calming, no longer under the threat of corruption, but Alice couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The Dream Reaver's presence lingered, a shadow at the edge of her mind. Hours passed as they journeyed through various dream worlds, each one more surreal and beautiful than the last. They passed through a field of floating islands where gravity seemed to shift with every step, and a vast ocean of clouds where the sky was a mirror that reflected their deepest thought. The dreamscapes were breathtaking, but always there was the threat of the nightmares lurking in the distance. Finally, they arrived at the heart of the dream continent, the ancient ruins of the first Dream Weaver. The stone structures were massive, towering over them, like sentinels from a forgotten era. Vines and moss crept over the walls, and the air was thick with the scent of magic. It was here, deep within the ruins, that they hoped to find answer. Alice led the way, her heart pounding as they ventured deeper into the ruin. The corridors were dark and winding, the air growing colder with each step. The magic here felt old, powerful, and dangerous. It was a far cry from the controlled, structured magic of the Weaver Academy. "This place gives me the creeps," Mira whispered, her voice echoing off the stone walls. "Are you sure this is where we need to be?" "There's no doubt," Alice replied. "The answers are here." They reached the central chamber, a vast hall with a dome ceiling that seemed to stretch up into infinity. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and on it rested a single object, a book, its cover worn and cracked with age. The symbol of the Dream Weavers was etched into the leather, and as Alice approached, she could feel the power emanating from it. "This is it. This is it," she whispered, her fingers the cover. "The Dreamweaver Sus Codex. It holds the secrets of our power and the truth about the nightmare." Before she could open the book, a voice echoed through the chamber, cold and mocking. "You think you've found the answers, little weaver?" Alice froze, her blood turning to ice. She knew that voice. It had haunted her dreams for weeks. The Dreamweaver. A figure stepped out of the shadows, tall and imposing. His eyes gleamed with dark power, and a cruel smile played on his lip. "You were too late," the Reaver said, his voice dripping with malice. "The nightmares are already spreading. Soon, they will consume both the dream world and reality, and there is nothing you can do to stop it." Alice stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest. "We'll see about that." The Reaver laughed, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. "You real fool, if you think you can stop me. I am the master of dream. I control the nightmares, and soon I will control everything." He raised his hand, and the shadows in the room began to writhe, forming into monstrous shapes that lunged toward Alice and her companion. "Get ready," Kane shouted, drawing his weapon as the nightmare creatures closed in. Alice's mind raced. She had to think fast. The Dream Weaver was powerful, more powerful than any enemy they had ever faced. But she wasn't too alone. She had her friends, and she had the Dream Weaver, Silex. Maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. With a shout, she opened the book, the pages glowing with ancient magic. The power surged through her, filling her with strength and clarity. She raised her hand, and the shadows recoiled, hissing in pain as the light of the Codex tore through them. The final battle had begun.